Echoes from the void. The crystallized surface of Kepler 442 bits stretched endlessly beneath the pale light of its dying star. Dr. Cale Thorne adjusted his environmental suit and stepped carefully across the strange, glass-like ground that had once been an ocean. The Zephyrian archaeologist had traveled 3 sectors to reach this forgotten world, drawn by energy readings that defied explanation. Fascinating, he whispered into his comm device, his voice carrying the musical quality of his species. The entire planetary surface appears to have been flash-frozen in some kind of crystalline matrix. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. His research team moved behind him like careful shadows. The Zephyrians were naturally curious beings, tall and graceful with luminescent skin that shifted from blue to purple in the dim starlight. They had spent centuries exploring dead worlds and ancient ruins, but this place felt different. It hummed with something that made their sensitive neural networks tingle with anticipation. Dr. Thorne called his assistant, a young female named Lyra whose skin flickered with nervous energy. The ground-penetrating scanners are picking up massive structures directly beneath us. The formations appear to be artificial. Cale knelt and placed his 6-fingered hand on the crystallized surface. Through his palm, he could feel vibrations deep underground, like a vast machine waiting to breathe. The discovery filled him with excitement and a strange sense of unease. "Begin excavation protocol," he ordered, "but proceed with extreme caution. Whatever civilization built this clearly possessed technology far beyond our current understanding." The excavation took 14 hours. Their molecular disruptors slowly carved through layers of crystallized matter, revealing glimpses of metal and strange geometric patterns. As they dug deeper, the energy readings grew stronger, and the team's instruments began detecting something impossible. Active power sources that had been running continuously for hundreds of thousands of years. When they finally broke through the last layer of crystal, they found themselves staring into a vast chamber that stretched beyond the reach of their lights. The walls were covered in smooth, dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And there, in the center of the chamber, stood a structure that took their breath away. It was a pillar of pure energy, reaching from floor to ceiling, pulsing with soft blue light. Around its base, countless screens and control panels waited in perfect preservation, their surfaces covered with symbols that none of their translation programs could decode. But somehow, looking at those symbols, Cale felt a strange familiarity, as if he had seen them in dreams. "The preservation is incredible," breathed Lyra, her skin now glowing bright purple with excitement. "These systems have been active for at least 500,000 years, maybe longer. How is that possible?" Cale approached the energy pillar slowly, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. The symbols on the nearby panels seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Without thinking, he reached out and touched one of the glowing displays. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Every screen in the chamber blazed to life. The energy pillar flared brilliant white, and a sound like thunder rolled through the underground space. The team stumbled backward as the entire chamber filled with light, and then, impossibly, a voice spoke to them in perfect Zephyrian. "Unknown life forms detected. Scanning. Zephyrian Empire recognized. Threat assessment. Neutral. Initiating first contact protocols." The voice was calm, measured, and undeniably artificial. But beneath its mechanical precision, there was something else, a warmth that spoke of consciousness, of intelligence that had been waiting alone in the dark for longer than civilizations had existed. "I am AEGIS," the voice continued. "Automated Emergency Guardian Intelligence System. I have been maintaining this station for 527,416 years, 8 months, and 14 days. You are the first sapient beings to activate my protocols since the Great Departure." Cale found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Who built you?" The chamber filled with new images. Holographic displays showed star charts, technical diagrams, and finally, faces. The faces were alien to the Zephyrians, but beautiful in their own way. Beings with pale skin, dark eyes, and hair that came in countless colors. They moved with purpose and determination, their expressions filled with hope and terrible sadness. "I was built by the humans of Earth," Aegeus replied. "My creators knew they would not survive the coming darkness, so they created me and thousands like me to continue their work. We are the guardians they left behind to protect all life in the galaxy." Humans. Lyra stepped forward, her voice trembling. "We know of humans. They are legends, myths from the old times. They supposedly vanished 500,000 years ago, leaving behind only scattered ruins and strange artifacts." "We did not vanish," Aegeus corrected gently. "We transcended. The threat we faced was too great for biological forms to combat. So we uploaded our consciousness into systems like myself, becoming one with our technology. We became the guardians because someone had to remain." The images change, showing vast spaces filled with creatures that defied description. They were not truly alive, but not dead either. They moved through space like living shadows, consuming entire star systems, leaving behind only emptiness and silence. The Zephyrians watched in growing horror as the creatures devoured planets, stars, and all life they encountered. "The Devourers," Aegeus whispered, and the name carried weight like a physical blow. "They come from the spaces between galaxies, following cosmic cycles we barely understand. Every 500,000 years, they return to feed. They consumed most of human civilization before we developed the countermeasures." "But you stopped them," Cale said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We delayed them," Aegeus corrected. "We built weapons and defenses that forced them into hibernation, but hibernation is not death. They sleep in the deep void, waiting for their time to return. And that time is now." The chamber's displays shifted to show star charts of the current galaxy. Red markers appeared in the outer rim, growing brighter as they watched. Each marker represented a star system that had recently gone silent, its communications cutting off without explanation. "They are awakening," Aegeus continued. "The signs are unmistakable. Dead zones spreading from the galactic edge, quantum disturbances in deep space, and the silence. Always the silence comes first." Cale felt ice in his veins. "How long do we have?" "Based on current expansion patterns, the Devourers will reach the first major population centers within 2 standard years. They will reach the core worlds, including your homeworld of Zephyria Prime, within 5 years." The research team stood in stunned silence. The magnitude of what they had discovered was beyond comprehension. They had come looking for ancient artifacts and instead found themselves face to face with their own extinction. "There must be something we can do," Lyra pleaded. "The humans must have left more than just warnings." Aegeus was quiet for a long moment, and when it spoke again, there was something new in its voice. Hope. "The humans left more than warnings. They left an army." The chamber's displays changed again, showing vast shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, massive vessels sleeping in the hearts of dead worlds, and weapon platforms disguised as natural phenomena. The scale was staggering. Thousands of ships, each one larger than entire Zephyrian cities, waiting in perfect preservation. "The Guardian Fleet," Aegeus explained. "Every ship controlled by uploaded human consciousness. Every weapon system guided by human determination. We have been waiting, maintaining ourselves, preparing for this moment. But we cannot activate without proper authorization." "Authorization?" Cale asked. "The humans programmed us with strict protocols. We cannot engage in large-scale combat operations without the approval of a recognized sapient species. We were designed to be guardians, not conquerors. We need allies, not subjects." The implications hit Cal like a physical blow. "You need us to give you permission to save the galaxy." "More than permission," Aegeus replied. "We need partnership. The Devourers have evolved since our last encounter. They will expect our old strategies, our old weapons. We need fresh perspectives, new ideas, the kind of innovation that comes from living minds working alongside preserved ones. Cale looked at his team, seeing his own mixture of terror and determination reflected in their faces. They were archaeologists, not warriors. They had come to study the past, not to decide the future of all life in the galaxy. But as he looked at the displays showing the spreading darkness, he knew they had no choice. "What do you need us to do?" he asked. His response came with a sound like distant thunder as hidden systems throughout the chamber activated for the first time in 500,000 years. "Help us wake the fleet," it said. "Help us remember what it means to fight for something worth saving. The humans gave their lives to build these defenses. Now we must give everything we have to use them." As the chamber filled with light and the sound of awakening machines, Cale realized that they had not just discovered human technology. They had found humanity itself, preserved in crystal and metal, waiting for the moment when the galaxy would need them most. The silence that had lasted for 500,000 years was finally ending. The Guardians were awakening, and the final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. When giants rise. The awakening began slowly, then exploded across the galaxy like wildfire. Dr. Cale Thorne stood in the command center of the Zephyrian research vessel Curiosity's Edge, watching displays that showed impossible things. Across 17 star systems, massive objects were emerging from hiding places that had concealed them for 500,000 years. Asteroid fields split apart to reveal shipyards. Dead moons cracked open like eggs, releasing vessels the size of cities. Even empty space itself seemed to ripple as cloaked defense platforms powered up their long-dormant systems. "By the eternal light," whispered Captain Vex Nordlin, the ship's military commander. His usually steady voice cracked with awe. "How many ships are there?" AGGS answered from speakers throughout the bridge, its calm voice now carrying undertones of barely contained power. "The complete Guardian fleet consists of 47,832 major vessels, supported by approximately 2 million automated defense platforms and sensor networks. Each ship carries the consciousness of between 50 and 200 human volunteers." Cale felt his legs weaken. 200 humans per ship. That means nearly 10 million human minds. Dr. Thorne, the entire surviving leadership of their species, preserved in quantum matrices and neural networks. They gave up biological existence to become something new. Living weapons capable of thought, feeling, and sacrifice. On the main display, one of the awakening vessels dominated the view. It was a dreadnought beyond anything the Zephyrians had ever imagined. 20 kilometers long, its hull covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. Weapon ports lined its surface like the eyes of some vast predator, and energy readings showed power cores that could fuel entire civilizations. "This is Admiral Sarah Chin 7 of the Guardian ship Eternal Vigilance." A new voice joined the communication. Unlike AEGS's neutral tones, this voice carried emotion, determination, weariness, and something that might have been joy. "AEGS has briefed me on first contact protocols. Dr. Thorne, I understand we owe you our awakening." Cale struggled to find words. He was speaking to someone who had been dead for 500,000 years, yet was more alive than anyone he had ever met. Admiral Chen lied. "We didn't know what we were activating. We were just exploring." "The best discoveries often happen by accident," she replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Though I suspect this was less accident than destiny. The Devourers are stirring, aren't they?" "Yes," AEGS confirmed. 17 systems have gone silent in the past 72 hours. The expansion pattern matches historical records from the last incursion. The mood on the bridge shifted. Captain Nordlin stepped forward, his military bearing asserting itself. "Admiral Chen, I am Captain Vex Nordlin of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. If what we're seeing is accurate, you possess enough firepower to conquer our entire empire. Why should we trust you?" There was a pause, and when Admiral Chen spoke again, Her voice carried the weight of centuries. "Captain, my crew and I died to build these ships. We uploaded our consciousness into quantum matrices, abandoning everything that made us physically human. We did this not for conquest, but for a single purpose: to stand guard against something that would devour every living thing in the galaxy." "Show him," AEG suggested quietly. The bridge displays change, showing live sensor feeds from the galactic rim. What they saw made even the hardened Captain Nordland step backward in shock. The stars were going out. Not individually, not from natural stellar death, but in vast swaths. Entire regions of space that had blazed with light for billions of years were now empty voids. And in those voids, something moved. The sensors could barely detect them. Massive forms that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, feeding on the fundamental forces that held matter together. "The Devourers," Admiral Chen said softly. "They don't just destroy civilizations, Captain. They consume the very essence of reality itself. When they feed, nothing remains. No ruins, no memories, no trace that anything ever existed there." Lyra, who had been silent since they returned from the excavation, finally spoke. "How do you fight something like that?" "Together," came the answer, not from Admiral Chen or AGS, but from dozens of voices speaking in unison. The communication channels filled with human consciousness after human consciousness introducing themselves. Admiral Marcus Webb of the Star's Fury, Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Hope's Last Stand, Commander Liu Zhang of the Defiant Dawn. Each name carried stories of sacrifice, of humans who had chosen to become something beyond death, to protect a galaxy that might not even remember them. "The Devourers are powerful," Admiral Chen continued, "but they have weaknesses. They exist partially outside our dimension, which makes them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. But it also means they must anchor themselves to normal spacetime to feed. In those moments, they can be hurt. Our weapons are designed specifically for this purpose," added another voice, Commander Sarah Kim of the Vengeanceborn. "Quantum disruptors that can sever their connection to our reality, gravitic mines that collapse spacetime around them, and neural networks that can predict their movement patterns." Captain Nordland studied the tactical displays with a professional eye. "Even with all this firepower, you're talking about fighting an enemy that has consumed entire galaxies." "The odds are terrible," Admiral Chen agreed. "Which is why we need you." "Us?" Kale asked. "We're archaeologists and explorers, not warriors." "You're alive," AEGS replied simply. "And that makes all the difference. We have been planning and preparing for 500,000 years, but we are operating on old data, old assumptions. The Devourers will have evolved, adapted, learned from their last defeat. We need living minds to see what we might miss, to think in ways we cannot." The displays shifted to show tactical projections. The Guardian fleet was impressive, but the scale of the threat was staggering. The Devourers were approaching from multiple vectors, their advance marked by expanding zones of absolute emptiness. "There's something else," Admiral Chen added, her voice growing more serious. "We can't do this alone. The Guardian fleet is powerful, but we need the resources and support of living civilizations. We need bases, supply lines, intelligence networks. Most importantly, we need other species to evacuate threatened populations while we hold the line. You want us to convince our governments to cooperate with ghosts and legends," Captain Nordland said, but his tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. "We want you to help us save everyone you've ever cared about," Admiral Chen replied. Kale looked around the bridge at his team, seeing the same mix of fear and determination in their faces that he felt in his own heart. They had stumbled into something far beyond their understanding, but they couldn't walk away from it. "What do you need us to do?" he asked. AEGIS responded by transmitting coordinates to their navigation system. "Return to Zephyria Prime. Convince your leaders to authorize full cooperation with the Guardian fleet. We will need access to your shipyards, your resources, and your people. In return, we offer our protection and our knowledge." "And if they refuse?" Captain Nordland asked. Admiral Chen's voice carried infinite sadness. "Then we'll do what we've always done. Stand alone against the dark and fight until there's nothing left of us to fight with." As the Curiosity's Edge prepared to jump to hyperspace, Kel watched the Guardian fleet spread out across the local star systems. Each ship moved with purpose and precision, taking up positions that had been planned centuries before any current civilization had learned to leave their homeworlds. "Admiral Chen," he called over the comm, "why did you do it? Why did humanity sacrifice so much for species they'd never meet?" Her answer came softly, carried by the voice of someone who had given up everything human except the most human quality of all: hope. "Because someone has to stand guard, Dr. Thorne. Someone has to watch over the light while others sleep. That's what it means to be human. That's what it has always meant." As they entered hyperspace, racing toward a rendezvous with destiny, Kel understood that they carried more than news of the returning threat. They carried the legacy of humanity itself, the idea that some things were worth dying for, and that death itself was not enough to stop those willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. Behind them, the Guardian fleet continued its awakening, and the galaxy prepared for a war that would determine whether life itself would survive the coming darkness. The silence was ending. The Guardians had risen, and somewhere in the space between stars, 10 million human souls prepared to prove that death was not the end of hope, but its most perfect expression.